One of the many benefits of Tai Chi, especially in a class situation, is that social interaction, that social support. And one time I remember we were in a class and one of the gentlemen in the class, more experienced, was trying to calm down the newbies in the class as we were learning the flow of the form. And he said to the newbies, he said, "Don't worry, if you get lost, just wave your hands around like this and you'll be just fine." Now, while in that context, he was trying to calm them down, that was very good. But really, Tai Chi is so much more than just standing in a room and doing gentle, slow movements. Tai Chi is a martial art. It is a system that teaches you how to address an opponent. And the movements and the underlying principles need to be understood in the context of preparing for a fight, of actually addressing an opponent. So we're going to take what we've learned over the last few weeks and put it into that context of preparing for a fight. So the first one, when we go back a few weeks, we learned about balance. And we learned about how balance is actually learning to understand your weight shift, understanding your substantial and insubstantial changes, being rooted and grounded, and moving from the Dantian. All of those are pieces of balance. I'm going to move to the mirror here, and I want you to stand up and just thinking about your substantial and insubstantial. Bring all your weight over to your left. Let your right leg be empty and just lift that right leg. Then bring all the weight over onto the right. Let the left leg be completely empty and lift the left. And just go side to side. Now you need to really think about that water flowing. Let this leg be empty and lift. Then let that water flow into the right and add the idea of being rooted and grounded. Feel your foot, feel it kind of grow roots, and lower your center of gravity just a touch by bending this supporting leg. Then you can lift that left leg. That idea of substantial and insubstantial, along with your columns, keeping your columns straight, being rooted and grounded, and then adding that idea of moving from the Dantian. Let's kick, smash, and box the ears. After we lift, kick, smash, lowering that center of gravity, then move from the Dantian and box the ears. Bring that left foot back, bring the weight all the way over onto that left. Let the right leg be empty. Lift, kick, smash, lowering that center of gravity, and box the ears. Think about going into a fight. I mean, this movement, kick, smash, and box the ears, is actually very graphic in what it's doing, right? You see that opponent, you're kicking someone, you're pulling his head and shoulders into your knee and then finishing him off. Think about how you must be balanced in a fight. If you're off balance in any way, your opponent has the advantage. If you're lifting that back leg and your columns are not intact, you're not rooted and grounded, you haven't lowered that center of gravity, you're going to lose that fight. So understanding balance in the context of a fight is very critical. One of my students asked, if this kicking leg is empty, where is the power? Which was a great question in context of the fight, right? Just because the weight, your column is here, you're balanced here. This leg is technically empty in terms of your weight, but it's not empty in terms of where that energy is flowing, where that how that energy is going into your opponent. And we'll come to that in just a little bit. But first I want to talk about the principle of rotation in the context of a fight. We talked about it a few weeks ago in terms of relaxing your body, how rotation is very relaxing. We talked about it in terms of the power that rotation brings. Let's look at wave hands like clouds. Let's do it first without stepping. And let your body relax. As you let the rotation take your arms across your body. And again, actually thinking about moving from the Dantian, bringing that Dantian over to the left and then over to the right. Remember the idea of the flashlight coming out of your belly button, and that light is traveling across that front wall, traveling 45 degrees to 45 degrees. So not losing the idea of that substantial and insubstantial change of moving from the Dantian, of being balanced. I want you to add the idea of rotation, and let's actually step with our wave hands like clouds. So bringing your weight all the way over to the right. Think about moving from the Dantian, rotating, let all the weight come into that left. Now your Dantian is that center of mass. It has to be over that base of support. That gives you balance, letting that right leg be empty so that it can move. So this rotation is helping you relax. It's also keeping you balanced as you apply that substantial and insubstantial change as you move. Let's go to the right with our wave hands like clouds. Focus on that relaxation. Focus on how that rotation is actually coordinating with your substantial and insubstantial changes. So all of these principles are going to start to come together. Relaxation in terms of preparing for a fight is actually kind of counterintuitive, right? You think you want to be amped up for a fight. You actually want to be very relaxed because you don't want to waste your energy being amped up. That is not good for the fight, not for you. You want your energy to be able to go into your opponent and to deflect your opponent away from you, not to be used up internally in and of yourself. So relax. Being relaxed in a fight is actually very, very important. Obviously, that rotation is also part of the power of the movement, and we'll come back to that in just a second as well. I referred to energy flow when I was talking about that empty leg kicking. In the context of a fight, you need to know where that ball of energy is, how you're going to use your energy against your opponent. Sometimes that energy goes into your opponent. Sometimes you let that opponent come towards you and you yield because that's the smarter thing to do, because then you know you have an advantage in another way. Understanding that ball of energy, remember our balloon that we had in our class, feeling that ball of energy being open and loose, relaxing, letting that energy flow through your body and then being expressed out through the hands or through the feet into your opponent. So let's do part the wild horse's mane, thinking about that ball of energy. But I don't want you to lose the idea of substantial and insubstantial, or the idea of rotation, because now we're going to add the idea of that power in the rotation with our part the wild horse's mane. So gathering that energy here, holding that ball. Look how I'm on the diagonal. My torso is pointing at 45 degrees. My left shoulder is towards my opponent, because that allows me to use my rotation as power against my opponent. If I were to just approach him like this, that's not as powerful as using my whole body, using that spiraling rotation. Holding that ball, gathering that energy, and then releasing that energy into your opponent. Now thinking about that substantial and insubstantial, your balance. You know exactly where your weight is so that you can approach your opponent and be in the advantage. Gather that energy, use your rotation, understand your balance, release that energy into your opponent. Let's do that part the wild horse's mane one more time. Holding that ball. Part the wild horse's mane. I want you to think about those underlying principles, using your rotation, feeling that substantial and insubstantial, being open and loose, being able to put that energy into your opponent. Last week, we worked on adding breathing to those underlying principles, because breathing is clearly an important part of preparing for the fight. If you're not able to breathe through the fight, you won't win the fight. If your lung capacity is not enough, you're not going to win the fight. You have to prepare yourself by preparing your breathing as well. So let's do the ward off sequence. And we'll think about the breathing, but then we're also going to add on those the principles of substantial and insubstantial, moving from the Dantian, the rotation in terms of power and in terms of relaxation, thinking about being rooted and grounded. All of these things are going to come together in this ward off sequence. So thinking about that ball of energy, let's think about that one first, letting that ball become small, and then stepping out. Bring that ball into your opponent, that energy. Grasp the bird's tail. Bring that ball to your hip in your rollback. Then rotate and press and pushing chi. Let's do that same side one more time. Add your breathing to that idea of the ball of energy. Gathering that energy, take a nice deep breath in, and then breathe out as you ward off and grasp the bird's tail. Breathing in as you pull that ball back to your hip, you're yielding to your opponent. Then breathing out as you press into your opponent. Breathing in as you allow him to come towards you, letting his energy come towards you, but then you push that energy away, breathing out. So let's do both sides of the body now. Breathing in, breathing out. Let that Dantian lead that rotation. Grasp the bird's tail. Breathing in, feel that weight shifting back as you pull it back towards your hip. Breathing out, your weight comes forward into your opponent. Breathing in as you start your pushing chi, and breathing out. Then as you gather your energy to go to the other side, you're breathing in. Think about that ball, letting that energy flow, breathing out. Grasp the bird's tail. Breathe in, roll back. Breathing out, rotate and press. Breathing in as you come towards your body, breathing out. And one more time on both sides of the body, think about how balanced you can be, letting yourself lower your center of gravity, moving from the Dantian, knowing where your weight is. You know exactly where that substantial leg is, where that insubstantial leg is. Your breath is actually helping you with this movement. You're letting that energy flow not only through your body, but then into your opponent, allowing that energy to come back as you yield, because now you know you can press into him. Pushing chi. So all of those pieces come together with the idea of an opponent. Let's do one more movement, thinking about being balanced against that opponent, knowing that we're in a stable position, knowing that we're going to use our rotation for power against our opponent, but also to be relaxed, because we know that that rotation gives us ultimate power. We don't have to tense up to be powerful. We know that our energy is flowing through our body, that there's no blockages, that we can use the full potential of our body against our opponent, and that our breath can remain deep and long, and we can use that breath to help keep our body open and relaxed. Let's do brush knee, and I'm going to come down this direction now. So I want you to take a nice deep breath in as you gather that energy, holding that ball. Use that rotation as you step out and you brush knee. Now think about keeping yourself in a balanced position. You're not overreaching. You just gave your opponent the advantage. You keep yourself rooted and grounded. You keep yourself within your columns. Now as you rock back, you know exactly where that weight is, holding that ball of energy, taking a nice deep breath in, using that rotation, brush, knee. Feel all the parts of this movement, and now visualize an opponent. Think about pushing his leg aside and coming right into his face with your palm. Keep your eye on your opponent. Where your intention is, that's where your eyes should go. Your opponent is here. You want to keep your eye on your opponent. That's actually an important piece of balance. Taking a nice deep breath in, using that rotation, and let your opponent know that you know where he is and you know how to take advantage of his mistakes as you brush knee. One more. Taking a nice deep breath in, stepping into your opponent, brush knee. So all of these underlying principles, all of the motions are helping you prepare for a fight. Yes, each individual underlying principle is also helping you to be balanced, to have less stress, yes. But when you put it all together and you think about that addressing an opponent, of preparing for a fight, that helps, that's the glue that puts all of this together, that you're not just standing in a room and doing slow, gentle movements. You're not going to get the benefits of Tai Chi if you don't really understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's what understanding how to address an opponent is all about.